G'day YouTube, Warbles on a lot here, 9:30, Sunday the 3rd of February. Today's roundtable discussion is going to be about when the rivers run dry, so I figure we probably should have a listen to that, eh?
Royal Commission into the management of Australia's most vital inland water resource, the Murray-Darling Basin, can best be described as a savaging. Commissioner Brett Walker delivered more than 750 pages last week, but they can be summarised pretty simply. The river system is being starved of water, too much is being taken out. Politics and ideology, along with what the Commissioner calls socio-economic considerations, have, he says, trumped the science. The result, he says, is unlawful and indefensible. Individual politicians, including the former Federal Water Minister Barnaby Joyce, have been singled out for some direct criticism. The whole system, says the Royal Commission, needs an overhaul, and there is particular criticism for the failure to take into account what the Commissioner calls the catastrophic potential consequences of climate change. Well, the head of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority, Philip Glyde, has rejected the findings, in his words, in the strongest possible terms. He says, "We haven't broken the law." Well, let's talk today at the Roundtable on the environmental science and the human realities of that river system. Your guests are Professor Richard Kingsford, head of the Centre for Ecosystem Science at the University of New South Wales, Ben Oaquist, former senior advisor to the Greens and now executive director of the Australia Institute, and Katrina Humphreys, the mayor of Moree Shire, on part of the basin's network of rivers. Hello to all of you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning. Hello, let's start with you, if I can, Katrina Humphreys, up on the river up in Moree. What was your reaction when you saw what was in this Royal Commission report?
Oh, look, there's parts of it that I quite agree with. I don't think it's illegal or, it's been passed by the government and the Senate passed it, so I really don't think it's illegal. I think we've got to stop pointing the fingers and come up with solutions. I couldn't find a lot of solid solutions in it, which troubles me a little bit. I think that it was very interesting that it should have been released on Tuesday after a long weekend, when on Friday afternoon the Australian Government Productivity Commission summary of the 5-year assessment was released late Friday on the 25th of January before the long weekend, where they said there's significant progress has been made. So somewhere between the two documents, we've got some facts, we've got some, I wouldn't be insulting and say fallacy, but there's a lot of emotion in all of this. I think sometimes you have to take the emotion out and just deal with the raw hard facts.
How do you view in Moree the state of the river system at the moment?
Well, the river system is being affected by drought, hugely by drought more than anything else. Mother Nature has actually been quite a cow for quite some time. She's given the most of the eastern seaboard of Australia actually a flogging with beautiful sunshine and not much rain, unless you're up in the northern Queensland part, and I feel so sorry for those people because they're about to lose all their livelihoods and everything else because they've got mammoth rain up there, as we've all seen. The state of the river in parts is very good. A lot of our farmers and graziers love their river. That's their lifeline. We're very short of flow because we're short of storages. We have to make good for dry times. We don't have enough storages. When you see the floods that went through here in 2011, 2012, a phenomenal flow of water that went through Moree, and I'm the mayor of the Moree Plains Shire, which takes in about 18,000 square kilometres. So we get to visit a fair bit and grew up here and know the lay of the land fairly well. But the rivers aren't in a good state because they haven't got enough water, and it's not because of anything other than this horrid drought, and it's been a dreadful drought for most of this century, punctuated with a couple of floods, which sounds a bit bizarre, but it's been a pretty tough gig. And the pardon the pun, the water flow in our rivers is poor. I'm trying very hard at the moment to get some environmental flow water out to Burke, which would help Walgett and Brewarrina. We need to get that water out there. It needs to be embargoed by the state government. I don't know if they're all talking to each other at the moment because I think they're having hissy fit over the South Australian Royal Commission.
All right, well, let's have a look at the science. There's nothing to this other than the horrid drought, says Katrina Humphreys. Professor Richard Kingsford, what do you make of that?
Oh, look, the science is pretty unequivocal that this is a river that certainly is in trouble because of the drought, but it's a long-term way that we've been managing the river. And in particular, I talk about, I point to the fact that, we have been taking a lot of water out of this river system. Katrina talks about that 2011, 2012 flood and not being able to capture it. Now, we have to remember that that flood is such an important part of this system. So that flood actually went all the way down the Darling and flushed it out. And it's important to think that the floods are a natural part of this system, as are droughts. And droughts and floods have been coming and going through time. We had, as everyone knows, a horrendous drought in the Millennium Drought. But the long-term rainfall patterns still do not have a strong signal of long-term decline in the Darling River catchments. And what we're seeing is that the river droughts are much harsher than the rainfall droughts in the catchment.
How do you mean that, the river versus the rainfall drought?
So the water that used to fall as rainfall and went down our river systems would often get all the way down. But now what is happening is, because we're taking water out of each of those catchments, Connemine, Ballon, Border Rivers, Guida, where Katrina is, Namoy, and also the Macquarie, means there's less water going down those rivers than would naturally go down those rivers. Therefore, that's a river drought, if you like. They're much harsher. So the dry times in the rivers are much longer than they would be naturally. The times between floods are also much longer. And the connections across that river landscape are also much more restricted. It's more fragmented.
Okay, Ben Oquist from the Australian Institute, you've been watching this over a long period of time. Were you surprised by the, let's say, the strongness of the language in Commissioner Brett Walker's report?
I was surprised by the directness of his language, but not surprised by the overall report. Going back a step, the Australian Institute came at this because, yes, the science is important, and looking at the river and the ecology, and the river needs more water, but we actually started out thinking, well, this has been a $13 billion plan, a massive reform, and a good policy to go into it with, bringing the states together, a Water Act that was, world leading, a plan that attempted to bring all stakeholders together, and $13 billion on the table, a huge reform. But looking at it halfway through, it seemed that a lot of money had been spent and not a great deal of outcomes were being achieved, certainly not the scale that you'd expect for that amount of money. And in fact, that in some instances, the situation had been made worse and the river was still dying, and some of the money was spent on things or making things worse. And a former worker at the Murray-Darling Basin Authority came to us and said she thought a lot was going wrong, and we ended up working with her over the last year and visiting towns and regions up and down the Murray-Darling, all four corners of it. And I guess overall, yes, more water needs to be returned to the river, but it's not as simple as the environment versus irrigators. There are small irrigators and family farms up and down that river system that we discovered that really felt that they were being done over, that the mismanagement, and remember, this was all sparked off by a series of investigations of corruption and water theft and mismanagement, was really doing not just over the environment, but many local farmers as well. And I think that's the startling thing about the Royal Commission is, yes, they've said the findings, yes, they've said we certainly need more water, but it's the mismanagement, the secrecy, the cover-up, the lack of transparency, the unlawfulness that is so stark. So whether you accept the science, if you like, or not, anybody who believes in good public policy and managing money well should be aghast at what this Royal Commission has found. And as Katrina said, what the Productivity Commission also found was that the Murray-Darling Basin Authority is no longer doing its job. No, it's its fault, but it's also the politicians that have pushed it to do this. And we really now do have a chance, not to throw the whole thing out, but to reform what has now become a failed system. And I think because it was such a big reform and so historic, it's been seen as too big to fail. And it's quite hard for policymakers, politicians in the community to accept that something has gone wrong. And we really do need a reset, a pause. We need to do something about floodplain harvesting. Okay, first of all, though, the Murray-Darling Basin Authority has got to open up and be a bit more transparent, release the modelling, release the business cases, so we can all know what's going on.
Okay, that's certainly a recommendation there in the Royal Commission. I'll get to that business of transparency and, in fact, the use and abuse of science in this whole argument. But if I can go to some of the texts that have come in, a lot of people are messaging through, and a theme, if I could just pull out one, there's a lot of theme about cotton. Where there's a lot more cotton being grown up in the Murray-Darling Basin. Just one here is one immediate solution is to stop growing water-thirsty cotton right now. There are others on that theme. You've got a bit of cotton up where you are, Katrina Humphreys. Do you think cotton needs to take into the blame not just for the thirstiness of the crop, but also for the need to use chemicals in the crop?
Well, firstly, yes, and I'd like to declare an interest. My husband actually works for a cotton company as a mechanic on a farm. So I need to declare that because I don't want somebody coming back and saying, oh, she would say that. I've lived here all my life. I'm 58. I grew up on the creeks and tributaries to the Barwon, and have been here all my life and saw cotton come in. Yep, we have a bell curve. We have a few radical people doing the wrong thing, but not many, and they should be prosecuted. I believe that there are matters before the court now, so we can't comment on that. At the other end, we have what I call a communist agenda, and they're far too radical to even be believed. But I believe in the middle, there's about 95% of very good people trying to do the right thing, and we want better, healthy waterways for sure.
Well, what's the communist agenda that you talk about?
Well, if you take away the right for people to own land, to use land, to farm land, to make money, make everybody equal, when everybody's clearly not equal. No one's equal. Someone's always got to take out the garbage, and that's a way of life. I've spent 4 years on the Northern Basin Advisory Commission, and I saw some very, very ugly stuff on both sides, but there's an absolute lack. There's an old saying, I'll go back to that, too many cooks spoil the broth. And everybody's got their finger in the pie of the Murray-Darling Basin. Now, I'm going to stick up for Phil Glyde and for Neil Andrew because they are both people with extreme integrity, people that I would be proud to have in my home, running my business, being part of my world anytime. But they got handed a poison chalice.
Sure, just to be clear, Phil Glyde is the Chief Executive of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, people may not be aware of that.
And Neil Andrew is the Chair of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority Board. With cotton, it's been an industry that's done a lot for many communities. It does take a fair amount of water, but we'd love to see more people up here to see how it actually operates. The water gets recycled and things like that. Cubby Station is the sore point, but there's things about Cubby that don't get talked about. Like Cubby Station doesn't actually have any water licences. It can only harvest water in an extreme flood, and it's told by the Queensland State Government when it can harvest water. So it's not this great big guzzling farm up there. They've got nothing up there at the moment. They've got no employment or anything else. With the irrigation and the cotton industry, I will stick up for the cotton industry because most of you, if you felt your shirts that you've got on now, they're probably made of cotton. May I suggest that a lot of people would have slept in cotton sheets last night. It is a product that is used very widely, and Australia makes and grows and processes some of the best cotton in the world. However, it leaves itself open for criticism at times because of this bad element, this greedy element, which come in all walks of life.
So who's the greedy element?
Well, people that have done the wrong thing. We've all seen the stories, and we all have heard about people that have pumped too much water and taken what they shouldn't have, and that's wrong, and it reflects badly on all the good people. We have some people that do some wonderful, wonderful work.
So it's the water thieves you acknowledge exists.
Exactly,
it's an issue.
Well, it is an issue. Whether it's water thieves or white collar thieves, they're out there in every industry, and they taint all. Look at the banking industry. People are ashamed to say that they're a senior banker now, which is also a shame when you've got a rotten apple sitting in that ruins the whole barrel. So we have to deal legally and lawfully with people that do the wrong thing, and they simply must be punished, because if they're not, yeah, there's a mockery. So
if I could ask you one thing, you're at the sort of the, if you like, the upper reaches, not completely at the upper reaches, but up that end of the whole system. How have you felt looking at people in Menindee, for example, the Menindee Lake system, closer down towards the South Australia border?
Hold that thought. Back immediately with a new video.